Hello and welcome to my Gamescom 2019 highlights video, where I'm basically just going to be going through some of the things that I enjoyed during the 4 major Gamescom conferences. So we're going to be going through the Inside Xbox conference, the Nintendo Indie World conference, the Opening Night Live conference with Geoff Keighley, and the other one which was... the Stadia Connect conference. This is unscripted and I've got notes in front of me, as you can probably tell. So yeah, let's just get on with it by talking about the first conference, which was the Nintendo Indie World one. So I didn't really expect too much going into this one. Nintendo have recently had a really good indie direct where they announced Cuphead and loads of other good things. So going into this I was kind of thinking they wouldn't have anything too big to talk about, but I was actually quite pleasantly surprised. They announced the Superhot is coming to Switch, Hotline Miami 1 and 2 are coming to Switch, and Ori and the Blind Forest are also coming to Switch. I've never played Hotline Miami 2, but I really enjoyed the first one, so I'm very tempted to pick that up, to be honest, just to replay the first one because I've not played it for years now, and to give the second one a shot. I'm also tempted to get Superhot. I've only recently played the original Superhot on PS4, but with Superhot I couldn't get into it that much because I've already played Superhot VR, and Superhot VR is just so much better, just because, I don't know, that game really lends itself to being in a VR environment, and it's actually my favourite VR game, the best one I've ever played, for certain. It's only really got competition from Astrobot Rescue Mission, which is a extremely good 3D platformer with in VR. But yeah, as well as that, Ori and the Blind Forest, I've never actually played. It's extremely highly acclaimed, so I don't know why I've never given it a shot. But when it comes out on Switch, I might actually get around to giving it a go. There were also some new games, or new to me at least, games that were announced at the Nintendo Indie World. There was a game called Europa, I think it was called, where it looks like a sort of physics-based platformer puzzle game, where you play as like a kind of what looks like a clay character who has to navigate his way around worlds and like solve puzzles, and I think the main gimmick of that is that gravity is sort of like gone weird, so you can like walk over cliffs and like remain attached to the floor. So it seems like it's going to have that element of exploration and thinking outside the box. So that might be an interesting one to look into. It looked pretty good from the trailer. I kind of want to see a little bit more about that before I know that I'm going to get it, but yeah, it looked pretty good from what we saw. There was a game in a like sort of montage called Fogs, which looked quite good. It looked basically like you control a double-headed dog that are conjoined at the body, and you have to sort of like solve puzzles and like do some basic like platforming. But yeah, we didn't see too much about that because it was a part of this bigger montage. But it looked quite funny, looked quite good. Had a nice art style to it, so I might have to give that one a bit of a look into as well, to be honest. There was also a game at this Indie World called Hypercharge Unboxed, which looked quite interesting, and I've actually done a little bit of research on since then because I was kind of interested in the look of it. It basically looks to be a first-person wave defense shooter where you're playing as toys, and you have to like stop the onslaught of enemy toys from getting into your base and like stealing your batteries or something. I think it's been out for quite a while on PC. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's in early access, or it was in early access. So from what little I've seen about that, it actually looks quite interesting, and if it's put on the Switch at a good price point, I might actually get that. It looks to be like a fun co-op game. I don't know if it's got any like PvP modes or anything like that. It might do, but from what I've seen of it, it's just this like sort of horde mode wave defense situation that looks pretty cool. Looks like you're fighting in like shops where the shelves are lined with toys, and you can like platform around, and the stages are like quite interesting. and like you've got that verticality with you being a toy. You can do stuff that humans can't, obviously. So yeah, it looks pretty interesting. I've got my eye on that one. Other than that, there wasn't really much that grabbed my attention too much at the Nintendo Indie World. Obviously, they did talk about a lot more games than just what I'm mentioning, but they were my personal highlights anyway. So let's now move on to Inside Xbox, which I think was the second press conference shown at Gamescom. And going into this one, I didn't really expect too much. I'm not a big Xbox guy. I do have an Xbox One, but to be honest, I hardly ever touch it. The only reason I use it tends to be if I'm watching a DVD. But yeah, maybe I should kind of get into the Xbox a little bit more. But yeah, so going into the Inside Xbox thing, I wasn't really expecting too much. I really actually enjoyed the way that it was presented. I wasn't expecting to, because it was a little bit sort of like a magazine show, I guess. So I wasn't really expecting to like that too much, but it actually worked quite well, and I quite enjoyed it. It was fast-paced. They had some interviews with like John Romero and other people like that. And yeah, they kept them short, concise. They showed off a lot of like world premieres with like new trailers and like new DLC and stuff like that. But having said that, despite enjoying the actual show, they didn't have too much there in terms of games that appealed to me. They talked a lot about stuff like PUBG, like Gears 5, like that sort of thing, and I'm just not very interested in those games. But what they did show was a new trailer for Blair Witch. I'm actually quite a big fan of the Blair Witch series in general. I really like the first film, and I think it's actually a little bit underappreciated nowadays, and people kind of just fob it off as being this, I don't know, there's this stigma attached to it where I don't think people find it scary anymore. But I think if you look at it for what it is, it's actually a really interesting film, and it obviously paved the way for loads of other films in that genre, found footage. So yeah, I think it's underappreciated, and I think it's better than a lot of people make out it is. And then there was obviously the reboot that they did recently, which acted as a sort of sequel to the original, which I actually liked. I know a lot of people don't like that one either. I think it loses a bit of what the original had, because in the original it was kept quite... the horror was kind of in the background, and a lot of it was down to interpretation as to what was going on. Whereas the reboot literally throws it at your face and you know exactly what's happening. There's nothing really to read into with it, which is disappointing, because I think a lot of the reason the first one is so good is because of the amount of theories that you can come up with afterwards. But yeah, I still enjoyed it for what it is. Anyway, the game, Blair Witch, kind of looks more like the reboot film than it does the original film. Because I guess it kind of has to be a little bit more in your face with it being a game. It's difficult to pull off a scary game when there isn't a threat, and when it's just all about atmosphere, I guess. I guess there kind of has to be some sort of physical thing after you in order to make it scary, I suppose. But yeah, I'm still interested in it. It looks quite good. Looks like it's quite low budget. With some of the animations and stuff, it didn't look quite like, it didn't have that AAA polish, but it looks pretty good. I'm interested in it. I'm interested in what it adds to like the lore of the film series, and to be honest, it's just going to be interesting for me as a fan of the film series to be able to walk around the woods and like find the house and actually walk around that in an interactive game experience. I think that's going to be really interesting for fans of the films. Inside Xbox also announced some free DLC coming to a game that I've already played through and really like, called Human Fall Flat, which is this sort of 3D physics-based platformer which is intended to be played co-op. So you basically play as these, again, like Europa, you're these like clay people who like don't have much control over their limbs. So you're just like flopping around all over the place, and you have to pick stuff up and move stuff around and solve puzzles, and as well as doing basic platforming. It's a fun game. It's definitely a really good co-op game, so I'm glad that that's getting support with free levels. I think they already did one free level, which was like a Halloween-themed thing, but this one is called Steam, and I think it's more like industrial. I think in the trailer you saw them like putting pipes together to like build some sort of mechanism to like open a door or something, I don't know. But yeah, it looks really good. Happy that the game's getting support after launch. With Inside Xbox, that's pretty much all of the games that were shown that I have any interest in. So next let's move on to the third conference, which was the Google Stadia conference called Stadia Connect. The thing is with Stadia Connect is that they're kind of focusing on just announcing games for their platform rather than announcing games that are new or exclusive to their platform. So for this, really the only people that are going to get excited by the premise of what they're announcing here are people that are already invested in Stadia and have already pre-ordered it or already know that they're going to be getting it. For anybody else, it's kind of just a little bit like it doesn't really matter because the games are coming out on like everything else anyway. But still, it's good that they are getting Doom Eternal on it. I think that was already announced, but they still mentioned it in the Stadia Connect. So yeah, Doom Eternal's coming to Stadia. We have the remake of Destroy All Humans coming to Stadia as well, which is good because obviously the more platforms these games are on, the wider audience it will have and the better they'll do, which is always a good thing. There was also a new trailer for Superhot Mind Controlled Elite, which is a sort of I think it's described as a standalone DLC for the first Superhot. I'm probably going to get this. I've already mentioned earlier in the video how I am more of a fan of Superhot VR than I am the original, but the original's still good, and I'm wanting to support the developers, so I'm definitely going to be getting Mind Controlled Elite. It just looks like kind of more of the same original Superhot, but with new like areas, new weapons, and that sort of thing. Looks like it's going to be good. I'm anticipating it. And then we move on to the last conference, which was probably the biggest. It was definitely the most hyped up, and that was Opening Night Live, which was hosted by Geoff Keighley. One of the biggest announcements, in fact the biggest new game announcement appeared here, and that's for Little Nightmares 2. I was a big fan of the original Little Nightmares. I did a video on it quite a long time ago actually on the channel, so you can check that out if you're interested. But yeah, big fan of Little Nightmares, and looks like the new one's going to be co-op, which is interesting, so I'll definitely be giving that a go. But yeah, it just looks like kind of more of the same. It's going to expand on the lore. You're actually outside this time rather than being trapped on the inside of a ship like you were on the first one. So that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing more of the like grotesque enemy designs that they come up with. We already got a little bit of a glimpse of that. There was like a teacher and like a hunter in the forest. But yeah, excited to see what more is in the game when it comes out. I'm definitely getting that on day one for sure. We then got a new trailer for Monster Hunter Iceborne. I feel like all of the Monster Hunter Iceborne trailers kind of look the same at this point, because it's basically just showing you fighting the same sort of monsters covered in like snow and ice. But either way, I'm pretty excited for the Iceborne DLC to come out. I did a video on Monster Hunter World quite a while ago, so again, check that out if you're interested in my thoughts. But yeah, really liked Monster Hunter World. I've not played that game for a very long time though. Again, I'm not really sure why. I think it's just that new games were coming out and Monster Hunter World just kind of got put on the back burner. It's not that I started to not like it or anything, it's just, yeah, kind of lost interest in it as time went on. When it first came out though, I must have played that for like a good month solidly, so yeah, I really liked it. Best Monster Hunter game ever made, for certain. There was also a new trailer for the new episode of Life is Strange 2. With that, I am really excited to get around to playing Life is Strange 2, and I can't wait to give it a go. But the only reason I've not yet played any of it is because I'm kind of waiting for all of the episodes to be out, and I'm waiting for a physical release as well. So yeah, the only real reason for that is because I kind of don't like the episodic format in video games. I don't think it works very well, because when I'm playing a video game, I want to be able to be invested in the story, and I want to get like really involved and play it like really intensely, especially with a narrative driven game like that. But with the episodic format, you're like constantly being stopped from like continuing the game, and I kind of feel like I'd play episode 1 and then like a few months after episode 2 would come out, but then I'm kind of not as invested in the characters as I was when I was playing episode 1, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm waiting for all of the episodes of Life is Strange 2 to come out before I play through the whole thing, just because I kind of want to sit down and solidly play it. There was also a trailer here for a game called Guilt, which I have never seen before. I don't know if this was the reveal of it, or whether it had already been revealed at some point in the past, but Guilt looked really, really cool. Kind of looked like a sort of a kid-friendly horror game, because the art style was kind of cartoony, and the monsters weren't so like horrifically designed that they would be scary to an adult. But yeah, it looks like it could be quite a good game. It kind of reminded me of, I think it was actually brought up in the show that it reminded them of Alan Wake, with this sort of torch combat mechanic where you shine a torch at the enemies in certain places to get rid of them. So it has that going on. It has like stealth elements. Seems to have a little bit of a seems to have quite a lot of symbolism to do with like school bullying and that sort of thing. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can check that out. I'm keeping my eye on that one. Might get it when it comes out. I need to see more gameplay, really, to be honest, before I can make up my mind. But yeah, from what we saw, that looked really, really, really good. This is unrelated to Gamescom itself, but it's during the opening night live conference that the news broke that Insomniac have been purchased by Sony, which I think is amazing, to be honest. Insomniac are a studio that are just so closely intertwined with Sony anyway that it only makes sense. Like obviously Sony already own Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch, so it kind of just completes the trio of that style of developer by them owning Insomniac. Obviously Spyro was a PlayStation exclusive, Ratchet & Clank still is a PlayStation exclusive, there was Resistance, which was a PlayStation exclusive. So yeah, they've made all of these PlayStation exclusive games. I think the only one that they've ever made that isn't a PlayStation exclusive is Sunset Overdrive. So it kind of makes sense for Insomniac to just be owned by Sony at this point, and I'm sure that Sony aren't gonna interfere with their creativity or anything at this point. They'll just leave them to do their own thing. It'll just be that they'll now have potentially bigger budgets, and potentially they'll be working more closely with Sony and be given more access to like dev kits and that kind of thing. So in theory, Insomniac games could be even better in the future. There's obviously Spider-Man PS4 as well, which is another exclusive that Insomniac developed. So yeah, I just feel like this news is good, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Insomniac does next, whether it be a new Spider-Man game or anything else that they've got in the pipeline. Now, opening night live ended with quite a lengthy section all about Death Stranding, where there were 3 new trailers shown, 2 of which being just like cutscenes, and the last one being a little snippet of gameplay. It looks very, very Hideo Kojima, just from the way that there's like a urinate option and a urination meter that like goes down as you relieve yourself. There's also a hologram Geoff Keighley in the game, which is pretty cool. Good for him, with him being such a big Hideo Kojima fan. You also have to look after your baby in the incubator by rocking the PS4 controller around, which again is it's a very like Hideo Kojima thing to do. It's gimmicky, and if that was in another game, I almost feel like that would be a little bit like frowned upon for being too gimmicky, but I feel like in the context of a Hideo Kojima game, it just for some reason works. Like, despite the game looking basically like a horror game, it's also got that like zany, like stupid characteristic as well to like sort of balance it out, and I think it just works really well. And it's something that Hideo Kojima has always done in his games, and somehow has always got that balance right. So yeah, anyway, Death Stranding, despite having seen several bits of gameplay and a lot of cutscenes for this game, it's just insane because I still don't really know what it is. I still don't know what it's about, but I feel like that's a part of the experience. It's a part of the build-up to the game that you don't know what's going on. And I, for one, am really enjoying it, really enjoying the build-up to the game. He did say he's going to be showing off more at Tokyo Game Show, so whether we'll finally know what the game is then, or whether we'll literally just have to wait to get our hands on the game before we fully know what it is, I'm not sure. But either way, it's a definite day one purchase for me. I'm a huge Hideo Kojima fan, a huge fan of Metal Gear Solid. So yeah, Death Stranding, it kind of is a no-brainer. I'm obviously going to be getting that at this point. I think a lot of people are, to be honest. It's probably the most hyped PS4 game, maybe apart from The Last of Us Part 2, which, again, I'm also extremely excited for. But that's not coming out until 2020, hopefully early 2020. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Gamescom 2019. I'm aware that things were happening outside of these 4 conferences. Like, I think IGN are doing quite a lot of stuff. I think THQ Nordic are doing like streams throughout the week, announcing new stuff. I think they've already shown off some of the SpongeBob game, actually. But yeah, I'm yet to check any of that out. I just wanted to kind of make a video about the main 4 conferences, really. But yeah, I've got my eye on the news, so I'll be keeping up to date with anything going on Gamescom, and if anything big happens, I'll be sure to tweet about it. So if you're not following me on Twitter, be sure to follow me there to keep up to date with stuff. But yeah, there's my thoughts on the 4 main conferences of Gamescom 2019. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you liked about the 4 conferences and anything that's happened since then. Let me know what your like top 3 announcements are. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!